Сейчас у нас немножко другая тема. С утра у нас был с вами креативный круглый стол, где мы общались с креативной индустрией. Сейчас мы с вами послушаем человека, который очень интересный, очень важный человек в моей жизни. Его зовут Стивен Лейси. Стивен, не знаю, нас слышит сейчас или нет, он нас еще не слышит. Сейчас у нас будет минутка, я немножко про Стивена расскажу. Стивен на самом деле отвечал за стратегию в нескольких глобальных агентствах, он из Лондона, соответственно, он был нашим с вами коллегой, строил различные стратегии для различных международных брендов. Вы все знаете, что тема diversity, некого разнообразия мира, очень важна сейчас на глобальных рынках. В России эта тема не набрала еще пока такой значимой тональности, с моей точки зрения. Вот Стив, наверное, расскажет о своем опыте, как он чувствует аудиторию в России и насколько аудитория в России... Так, мы слышим Стивена. Насколько я слышу? А Стив нас слышит?
Right now I'm talking in the general channel.
Они пытаются подключить английскую дорожку. А как мы решим? Мы решим это технически?
Where is the globe button?
At the bottom.
Так я же ему скриншот скинул, Стив. Окей. Ладно. Что очень важно знать про Стива? Помимо того, что он работает сейчас в агентстве, которое называется Outsiders, и он строит коммуникации для различных глобальных рынков. То есть в пуле его клиентов Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Mars и ряд других. Он, помимо всего прочего, очень интересуется культурой России. Он очень много сделал исследований на тему старых патриотов, когда еще учился в университете. И несколько раз был в нашей стране, а также в соседних странах, я имею в виду Беларусь, Украину и прочее. Он общался как раз со старообрядцами, живущими вот на периферии Российской империи. Вот. Это его хобби. И, соответственно, сейчас у нас, я думаю, что все готово для того, чтобы послушать Стива. Да?
From Steven. Извините, я говорю по-русски плохо, so I will speak English, but please forgive me. So I run a company called The Outsiders based in London, and today I'm going to talk to you about global diversity. What I'm not here to do is I'm not here to preach, so I'm not coming here with big kind of Western values telling you how to do diversity. I'm not going to teach you anything, I'm not going to preach anything. I'm just going to share some kind of insights and thoughts about maybe the best ways to do it or different ways you could do it, and I think different people will have different approaches. First, I'm just going to give you a quick background about who I am. So, I'm an owner of The Outsiders, which is a research and insights agency based in London. I'm an ex-advertising strategist. I run the global insight for Mars, Essity, Greece, and worked also on Samsung. I love Russia very, very much. I first visited Russia in 1989. Worked with a number of Russian brands and travelled across the former Soviet bloc. Spent a couple of months a year usually living in Belarus, and I'm fascinated by Russian history. So my specialist areas are very interested in the economic power of the old believers in the 19th century, Ivan III, the Oksatina elders, and Galician Russophiles in Western Ukraine. I want to do a PhD in Russian history. I'm also disabled. So I have what's called a lobster hand, I have bow legs, and it's a missing fibula and a shortening of tibia, 2 toes on one and 4 on the other, and also what's called neurodivergent, which is I'm dyslexic, and I'm from what's called a working class background. So disability is something that I feel very, very passionate about, and try and push very, very forward as much as I can. So just some statistics about disability. So they estimate around 15% of the world's population is disabled, but when you include friends and families, that number gets bigger and bigger. So if you took the UK, for instance, about 19% of the UK are disabled. When you take their friends and family into the equation, you're looking at about 40%. So it's very important when you're thinking about brands that you recognise that it's not just limited disability, but also impacts on their friends and family. Because you have a good reputation with disabled people, then the friends and family will feel warmer towards it as well. 8 out of 10 people aren't born with disability, so I was born from birth, but many people aren't. 1 in 6 of us will be affected by a disability, and most people, as they get older, will start to acquire disabilities. 75% of disabled people have more than one impairment, so I have a dexterity issue, a mobility issue, also dyslexic, and sadly, more clothes are made for dogs than those with disabilities. When we look at the business stats, because I think we have to put the business case forward, so the purple pound, which is the disability pound, is worth £8 trillion. Businesses lose approximately £2 billion a month by ignoring the needs of disabled people. People with disabilities say that 75 to 80% of their customers' experiences are failures. People will walk away from businesses. So people walk away from businesses if it's not suitable for disability needs. So you lose customers. So that's disability. So why is diversity and inclusivity important? Well, I think there's a number of reasons. It's reflective of society. So society is not just made up of a set kind of person, but even if you take Russia, for instance, there's, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, about 148 different nationalities and ethnicities. There's people with disabilities, as we kind of saw, people with different kinds of sexualities. So talking about diversity and inclusivity isn't a set criteria, it's a reflection of society. It might also be a number of your kind of staff. As we kind of illustrated, many, especially in terms of disability, who sit within a non-diverse group may well become disabled in the future. I think it's important, it creates brand warmth. So the days of the USP, the emotional selling point, have long gone, and there's not that much differentiation between brands. So talking about diversity and inclusivity creates a feel-good factor around a brand, which creates a point of difference. It makes better products. So better products are now people moving to universal kind of design. So you have better kind of products. People will talk about it. Not just, for instance, the 19% of people who are disabled, but it will be talked about by 30, 40% of the population. And it can help you increase sales. So if you look at the UK, you look at Maltesers, which is produced by Mars. They feature someone with a disability. Featuring that person with a disability actually was the best performing advert and campaign that Mars have had in 20 years globally. And lastly, it creates hope for people, and it challenges kind of stereotypes, which we'll come to a little bit kind of later. But we have to acknowledge, and it's really important this, it's not about importing UK, US kind of values. We have to acknowledge that different countries have different kind of challenges. So if we look at disability, in the US, disability is very low on the agenda. People talk much more about race, especially with Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, but no one really talks about disability. In the UK, disability is getting more on the agenda, but not really so much in the kind of workspace. So a great example of that would be recently after Black Lives Matter, there was a campaign to have disabled black creatives in the advertising industry. You don't even have really disabled creatives. So we're not even getting through the door, especially in services such as advertising. Lithuania. So I dated someone for a number of years from Lithuania, and her family were horrified. Like, if you marry him, the child will be a monster. And what will the neighbours say? So disability, in my personal lived experience, was very frowned on. Then we take China, and disabled people are often chained up and locked up and not allowed to go up. And it can be bad luck, for instance, to touch someone who's disabled. So different countries have different challenges and different perspectives. And reflecting that, countries have unique codes. So when we take women and gender kind of empowerment, in the UK, women and also men are shown much more vulnerabilities. So they show their vulnerabilities, their personality. We did a big project with Maxim in Russia, and what we saw there is that women often want to be perfect. So they want to be the perfect housewife, or the perfect mother, or the perfect businesswoman. But constantly being perfect is exhausting. But rather than show vulnerabilities, Russian women would show much more femininity. In China, there's a number of kind of leftover women. So in China, you marry upwards. So you have billionaires and millionaire Chinese women who can find no one above them to marry. When we look at the Middle East, for instance, it's a concept that's based on shame and honour, not so much guilt and redemption. And marriage is really, really important. So certain products, such as tampons, are seen as a no-no because of virginity. But in the Middle East, women are also doing very, very well in terms of education and starting to change the system. So we have to understand the country's unique codes, and that is very, very vital, where people are. And what we're not trying to do is be progressive and put everyone on a forward transaction. I think that's wrong. We just need to understand what are the codes and how people operate. Now, within groups, in countries, there's different groups. So there's some people that are very positive about diversity and inclusion. There's some that are very kind of negative. Even in the UK, you have this division. So you have a hyper-local group that are conservative, much more of a small c. They don't like political correctness. They can be anti-immigration and anti-multiculturalism. When they look at diversity and inclusion, they tend to be pro things that touch them personally. So it could be, I have an uncle who's disabled, so I feel much more passionate about that. Or my daughter is married for someone from a different race, so I don't like racism. Then you have kind of global citizens who are much more kind of liberal, they're thinking about the world, very pro-political correctness and pro-multiculturalism, and they want to embrace all the aspects of kind of diversity. But I think one of the big problems with diversity and inclusion, and I'd include belonging in that as well, because that's the end goal, is lots of generalisations are made. So one of my kind of pet hates is, in the UK we use this terminology, Eastern European. What does Eastern European mean? But Romanians are from a Latin-based culture, they're very, very kind of different to Western Ukraine, and Western Ukraine can be very distant from Eastern Ukraine. And then you take Russia and the Baltics, and you take people from Estonia with much more Finnish background. It's convoluted, it's kind of a meaningless terminology and a generalisation. And I think generalisations lead to stereotypes. And what we're really talking about is trying to smashing down kind of stereotypes. In the UK, sadly, we have lots of stereotypes about Russians. So Russian women are often seen as kind of sex workers or gold diggers. So wanting the passport to the kind of UK. Why people would want that, I don't know. My friend, for instance, Russian, she's an actress in the UK. She's not quite a famous actress in Russia, but in the UK she couldn't get any decent jobs. She's always been portrayed as a kind of sex worker or as a gold digger. People always like, you're Russian, oh, Putin. You have the classic ones of the bear, which kind of goes back to the Crimea War, or mafia, or drinking. So many groups are sadly kind of stereotypes. And what we're trying to challenge is those kind of stereotypes. So here's some kind of tips about communicating diversity and inclusivity. And they're just tips. I'm not here to kind of preach to you in any way, shape or form. I think there's different ways you can communicate diversity and inclusivity. You can challenge people. You can be the first, which surprises people. One of my favourite examples was the Mars Pet Care in Russia, where they used a Down syndrome child. I mean, that was groundbreaking. You can inspire people, but that can sometimes go wrong. But when I speak to diverse groups, what most diverse groups say, we just want to be normalised. We don't want us talking about our disability all the time. Just want to be seen, for instance, like me, as kind of Steve. So the best way is to kind of normalise communications. I'm a strong believer it's about an evolution, not about a revolution. So it's not here saying, right, with disability rights, ethnic rights, we're going to smash down all the kind of walls. No, it's about taking people on a gentle kind of journey and just changing things from gently within. I think the big thing is stereotypes, and we mentioned that earlier. All we're going to do is challenge and smash the stereotypes. If we take disabled people, the big one is all disabled people are the same. But someone with a hearing impairment is very different from someone with a visual impairment, and very different from me. General myths about disability are they should be pitied or treated like children. They can't be a wife and can't have sex, can't get married, can't be successful. Then we take visual impairments. There's myths and stereotypes like they see only in darkness, they all use braille. It's only a small proportion that do. They're old people. Visually impaired are always old people. They can't have dreams and can't enjoy TV content. Hearing impairments, oh, they're stupid, they're mad. Hearing aids are always ugly. Those with physical impairments, been in an accident, or we need to speak to the person with them because we think it's their carer. And then we look at neurodivergency, ADHD, or lazy. If you're autistic, you're a geek, you must be a genius. If you're dyslexic, you're stupid. And if you have dyspraxia, you're clumsy. And this is what needs to be challenged, it's the stereotypes. But in the process of challenging stereotypes, we often create new stereotypes. So lesbians are seen as butch. So what we do is we show them as very, very young, very, very pretty, got tattoos and never kind of smile. Bigger bodied women are always sad. So what we need to do is always show them as white, happy and jumping up in the air. Neurodiverses are idiots, so we have to show them as geniuses. People with physical disabilities have struggled and must be pitied, so we must show them as superhumans. Muslims are always seen as fundamental, so we must show them as happy shopkeepers. So we always kind of create these kind of new stereotypes, and that's just lazy. And that's what needs to be avoided, because that's just as bad as the old kind of stereotypes. The next one is be true to your tone. So the best adverts work when you're true to the tone. Maltesers, when they used a disabled person, it felt light touch, it felt airy, it felt like the brand. Nike, when they talk about diversity, it feels in the spirit of just do it. The next thing I think is we often look at what divides us, and I think what unites us is really important as well. So talking about unity, what brings people together, fun, fairness, protection of kind of one's mental health and economic well-being. So look for what unites us, and that kind of pulls us. The best communications tap into shared values. So in the UK, we had an ad with Amazon did an ad with a priest and an imam. It was about sharing. Malteser's advert, you have a disabled woman with a group of friends, and she's just talking about sex, something that everyone can kind of talk about. So talking about universal values is the best way forward. And actually there is another thing, and that's to think of communications like Shrek. And the beautiful thing about Shrek is it works on the film, it works on different levels. You have the adult, and you have the child, and you have the things that adult and children can both understand. And I think the best communication is multi-layered. So you talk about shared values that everyone can connect, and then you have slightly hidden messages or more subtle messages that people from the disabled community or from an ethnic minority will pick up on, and it will show you understand them. And Russians are the experts on showing things in more multi-layered. I love the fact that dusha, soul, means nothing to a Westerner. Multi-layered meaning to a Russian. I think that's important. I think you're the masters of showing this. And I think the next thing, building onto that, is just make it feel Russian. So I did a lot of work looking at kind of more feminist-based ads in Russia. A lot of them failed, and why they really failed is because they didn't feel Russian. And I think this Nike ad is about a strong, independent woman. And that is really a form of kind of feminism, but it does it in a very kind of Russian way that makes it feel special. And don't make it feel Western, just kind of flying the flag from the embassy, for instance. That's just lazy and kind of lax thoughts. And that finishes my talk. Van Bros, thoughts, disagreements, points of view, please let me know. I will stop the share.
Давайте поблагодарим Стива. Может быть, есть у кого-то вопросы? Вы можете на английском задавать, на русском. Какой-то отклик, может быть, это нашло. Я в микрофон могу говорить? Будет слышно?
Yes. it's really interesting. You're seeing a lot of stuff in the disability space happening now. So for instance, Xbox has got adaptive controllers that disabled people can use. And Nike has just developed a new shoe and a new trainer that you don't have to lace up for people that are disabled. But I think where we're moving to really is into the concept of universal kind of design. So it's design that can be used for everyone. And Apple's probably the master of that. Nike is moving more into that space. I think one of the interesting things about Nike, because a lot of people talked about it in the UK and in the US, about the new trainer, was they made so much noise about it, and it was so well received, that sadly the people that needed it, for instance people who really struggled to do up shoelaces, such as myself, couldn't buy the product because it sold out so quickly. So I think that's just a watch out on limited kind of numbers. But the big movement is towards universal design and that everyone can kind of use.
Еще вопрос, может быть, у кого-нибудь, какие-либо любые комментарии, может быть, на тему того, как у нас в России вообще в принципе с этой темой, вот даже про которую сказать достаточно тяжело, что у нас слово diversity, да, вот даже разнообразие переводится, и это разнообразие, как правило, касается, я не знаю, разнообразия еды, наверное, да, в холодильнике или еще чего-то. А мы когда со Стивом говорили на эту тему, я говорю, в принципе, у нас тяжелая тема, если мы говорим про disabled people, то есть про у нас инвалиды, это, да, это тяжелая тема. Тема сексуального разнообразия у нас тоже очень стереотипизирована. И мне на самом деле интересно, чтобы вы дали хоть какую-то обратную связь, потому что, ну вот мы со Стивом на эту тему можем разговаривать, но это и только я. Да, sorry, Steve, Alif.
Yeah, I mean, I think every country has different kind of obstacles and different kind of challenges, and what I don't want to do is preach in any way, shape or form. But I think the end point where we want to get to, I think, is belonging. So that you get a lot of these words: diversity, inclusion, belonging, and kind of words are interesting because they're big words that can mean different kind of things. But for me, if you imagine being invited to a Russian wedding, diversity is being asked to the wedding, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belonging is being able to dance how you want to dance without any judgment. And I think all countries are ideally, if they shift to belonging, would be a great place, in my opinion.
Steve, we got a question.
Yeah.
Лучше, наверное, к нему подойти, наверняка просто.
Hi. Hi. How you doing?
So I think maybe we can share some stories that you've heard from us when we were in the project. Maybe what is touched you most about the project?
So I think for me, a lot of the stuff it's the challenges that people face every day, and I think some of the ones around the bigger-bodied women was very kind of difficult, where often they will find it hard to kind of date people. People will have sex with them, but often will be kind of laughed at and kind of judged, and I think that for me was really kind of hard elements. I think also hearing about some of the Muslim kind of communities in kind of Pakistan was very touching as well. I think bigger-bodied women is really interesting because we have different sized women. And I was reading, even in the UK, people struggle. So we have bigger-bodied women, which is kind of size 18, and then we have kind of more kind of the models, which is size 10. And actually, mid-sized women are hardly represented at all. For instance, in the UK, I think something like 22% of clothes for mid-sized women, which is where the bulk of women are. And we don't really see that representation even in advertising. So there were some kind of sad kind of stories. But for me, I think a lot of it, people just want to be accepted. And I think, like all of us, we want to belong. And I think and hope that becomes a track something that happens across the kind of world.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Что,
Thank you very
спасибо.
much. Спасибо большое.
Да, если поаплодируете, будет здорово.
Спасибо.